Russia is defending mankind, civilization, and orthodoxy. This is the battle between good and evil, and we know, glory to the Lord, the Mother Russia will win.
Serbia is trying to play both sides of a conflict that's put them in a fun political bind. I'm Yasmin Khan with Rebel HQ, and today I want to talk about Putin's relationship with Serbia. While Serbia was one of the nations that voted to condemn Putin's invasion of Ukraine, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has also stated that he will not impose sanctions against Russia or Putin in response to the invasion. Sometimes when I talk about global affairs, I feel a little bit like a broken record because so many of the conflicts that we see across the globe, either throughout history or in the present day, are rooted in a lot of the same ideas, themes, motivations, so much so that it starts to get a little repetitive. So here we go again. Serbia is mad that they lost Kosovo. Do you guys remember the 90s? It was, MTV played music, our jeans were way bigger than they had to be, and Bill Clinton, my then BFF, was the president. But also, Kosovo dominated the headlines. As Yugoslavia was collapsing, the people of Kosovo wanted their independence, but Serbia was not having it. Kosovo's majority population was Albanian Muslims, and Serbia's attacks in Kosovo were considered by many, including the US and NATO, to be genocidal. In 1999, NATO intervened with airstrikes, ending the conflict. In the years to come, Kosovo would obtain its independence, but not everyone would recognize it. Russia did not recognize Kosovo's independence from Serbia. In fact, Russia was so against Kosovo's independence that Putin even used it as part of his justification for invading Crimea in 2014. Putin said in a statement, "The Crimean authorities referred to the well-known Kosovo precedent, a precedent our Western colleagues created with their own hands in a very similar situation, when they agreed that the unilateral separation of Kosovo from Serbia, exactly what Crimea is doing now, was legitimate and did not require any permission from the country's central authorities." By the way, I should mention that Kosovo is not as relevant to Crimea as Putin was trying to make it seem. For one, there was no active genocide happening in Crimea when Putin invaded. Also, Crimea wasn't a Russian state trying to separate from Russia. It was a part of Ukraine. Still, to Putin and others like him, the separation of Kosovo from Serbia signaled growing demands for autonomy amongst various, often marginalized or persecuted ethnic groups. God forbid. You can understand Russia's sympathy for the Serbian plight, as the USSR had only collapsed a few years before the war in Kosovo. It was still reeling from its own loss of territory at the hands of Western powers. But just as there was no active genocide taking place in Crimea in 2014, there wasn't one happening in the Donbas region either, when Putin declared 2 of its territories independent last month. Again, here, Putin mentioned that NATO used a claim of genocide in Kosovo to justify its intervention against the Serbs. Presumably, Putin was using NATO's own words and methods against it, claiming that a genocide was taking place and declaring the 2 breakaway territories independent. He's also calling out Western hypocrisy, sometimes even passively aggressive, which we all know is the most annoying power move. Today, Serbia is trying to play both sides of the current conflict in Ukraine. While Serbia has built and maintained strong ties with Western Europe and NATO nations, it still doesn't want to alienate its longtime political champion, Russia. Also, Serbia is largely dependent on Russia for energy, and Russian media has a strong presence there, resulting in strong pro-Russian sentiments amongst the Serbian people. While most countries saw pro-Ukrainian protests in response to Putin's invasion, Serbia saw rallies for Putin. Furthermore, Serbia refused to impose sanctions against Russia while voting to condemn the invasion. And when most of its neighbors blocked Russia from its airspace, Serbia increased its number of flights to Moscow. Is Serbia trying to have its cake and eat it too? It would certainly seem so. Thanks.